My name's Bob Reilly. This is the trailer, an introduction to what I dubbed the Suicide Elimination Tour, aka Bloody Hell Suicide, aka F blank blank K Suicide. Find your spiritual guide, your spiritual leader, and then dance on your love brick road to your wizard of love. I did two pilots, one with Director of Veterans Affairs in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, and that was a lot of the material several months ago, Christine LeClaire. And I also did a pilot with some of the songs at the commander of my post, Tatum Shields in Collingswood, Bob Reilly. And now I'm trying to extend the distribution because veterans are killing themselves at an ungodly rate, whether it's 22 or 17. I believe it's probably 10 times as much. And then the second thing is the youth depression and suicide. Youth deaths are number 2 due to suicide now. So they're the two main reasons. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to be doing, spread over what might be 18 to 24 chapters, and it's going to have some content. It's going to show you how I found my way through the deepest and darkest depressions I ever thought I could get through, and how I got through it with prayer, with love giving me the ability to love myself and then to love others, and to continue to give it away. And any gaps in actions, which I call them lifting others up, caused me to be stuck in the blue chair watching black and white Highway Patrol and Dragnet movies from the 50s. So what I'm going to tell you now is who, why, when, and what. Who? Bob Reilly, born in Philadelphia, Father Judge High School, LaSalle graduate, BS in accounting, drafted right out of college. I had got married junior in college when I was drafted, and then went to Vietnam actually. Left my wife pregnant, so my oldest son was born while I was there. I was in an artillery unit that was on 5 fire bases, and sum total of the casualties that kept me up 3 o'clock in the morning was 22, and I literally had to address those with some pain, with the help of the VA and the help of my spiritual guide that I found and that has guided me through, and that's Jesus Christ. Yours may be Buddha, Mahatma Gandhi, Joe Smith if you're a Mormon, may be different, but I suggest that to get through PTSD and come out of it to the brightness and sunshine and love, that I couldn't have done it any other way, actually, with any other leader spiritually. So my career at a MBA I got when I come back from Vietnam. I had a start-stop career, seven different job changes in 50 years, which I guess is not that terrible. The average is about 5. But I did have an abrupt change 7 years ago that led me to the VA, and I gave in for help. Physically, I've got AFib, 100%. I'm on my 3rd pacemaker. I've gone through, so far successfully, 2 colon cancers and lymph node, pre-diabetic, signs of macular degeneration coming, cataracts, COPD diagnosed, but I don't have any symptoms of it, but they still give me these things to breathe into, which I don't even pick up the prescription until I actually need it. And then I have an unidentified, I call it a UGO, unidentified growth object that's growing quite rapidly in my lung, and they don't quite know what that is. They'll snip it and send it away, and then I let them just do whatever it is they want to do, and just make sure I tell them to wake me up at the end. From a mental health standpoint, diagnosed at the VA very quickly, early on when I gave up, and I'll tell you a little bit about that, but PTSD, bipolar, major depressive disorder. Over the last 7 years in recovery and healing and praying, I had 5 calls for anxiety, anger, agitation to the crisis lines. And for myself, I didn't need one more day. I needed at an average of an hour each. So I'm hoping something I say will pause one veteran 1 hour, and everything I've done for my life was worth it, because I was born to do this, I believe. The career ended April 16th, 2016, after 22 years in a financial, professional leadership position at a company. One night working late, which was one of my isms, workaholism, I guess, to keep the demons away. And I saw demolition crews knocking down Edison High School in Philadelphia. And the next day, I aggressively led a small protest against the demolition crew and assaulted their 10-foot brand new chain link fence. And it was the last day I worked. It was probably the last break in my marriage and my family, which will never be repairable in this lifetime. But I sure do, like hell, try to help others, as you're going to see. I gave in to everything at the VA. It was the last day that I worked. And I had just the week before told my wife and my boss, I like what I'm doing so much that I think I'm going to work till I drop. And then a week later, I was down there and I dropped after banging, crashing, kicking, and punching the fence. Coincidentally, a couple weeks later, they did stop the demolition. And the mayor said, well, maybe the Edison family does give a shit about what happens to that building. I didn't go to Edison, I went to Father Judge. But I felt it was a severe desecration for 64 young men who gave their lives, by far the highest in the country. Somewhat later, only 2 months, I found my way to the replacement high school, and there was a song I had just put together, and that is the theme song for Edison High School at every ceremony. So that was quite nice to participate in. And they also made me the president of the Edison Friends Association, which is made up of only a few members. But over the 7 years, there have been thousands of dollars that I've been able to collect and generate for the future of America at the 5th and Luzerne Edison High School. So, why vet suicide rate? I mean, even if it's 22, it's 7,000 in the year. And if you just times that by 10, the Vietnam deaths were 58,000. It's more. And if they say there's 22, are they keeping track of it? I never see any names. How do they know when there's a death? Off the road, or obviously off a bridge, or a bullet to the head. But I believe there's just ungodly more, way more. And the second thing is, I bought one New York Post in my life, and that was last month on June 23rd. It says the new Great Depression. Well, depression, I'm into depression. I mean, it's stamped on my DNA from the Vietnam. It'll never go away. I'm 100% total, service connected. Ears blown out, so I got physical. I got all of the physical things. I got the cancers, and I got the mental health and all. But when I see depression, I say, oh, I read the whole article. The new Great Depression. Social media made teens despair. Well, University of Michigan did a study on 50,000 students from 8th grade to 12th grade. And 8th, 10th, and 12th, half. 50, University of Michigan. This is not just a local small sample. 50,000. 49.5%. I can't do anything right. I do not enjoy life is 48.9, and my life is not useful, 44. That's every other high school student that they talk to. How is that possible? But back to 2012, it was in the 20s. And coincidentally, social media explodes, 2012. So there's the students getting messages in 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 9 hours a day. They're walking. I see them walking across the street, not even looking at the light. They're just assuming nobody's going to hit them. This is the second leading cause of death for high school students. It's there's things, just the knowledge of that for the parents, for the neighborhoods, for the leadership, the politicians, to know that and take an article like that, even though it may not be their color, there it is. Jesus F. Christ. What the? So what am I going to do? This is a 15-minute trailer where I just kind of introduce myself and tell you the deep, dark depression for 46 years. Some people find it very hard to believe. 46 years, I didn't even acknowledge I was in Vietnam. My first job, I didn't have it on my resume. What did you do for those 2 years? I said, I was trying to get started in my father-in-law's trucking business. He was a steward, and I was loading trucks. I did that for 2 years. Instead of saying I was in the military in Vietnam, I didn't want to go through all that. And that stayed around for a long time. 46 years. I call it combat constipation. Right? I can't talk about it. Emotionally, it's just a big ball of crap. But once I reached out, once I start praying, once I did something for somebody else in a huge way. 64 high school students at a school I didn't even go to. I gave all for them because they gave all for me. They were my brothers. And I was willing to die that day for them. And for me, it comes down to, I thought one time, the 22 casualties, the biggest one that I could never face. I got a reunion message in 2006 in the Vietnam History magazine, and I wanted to go, but I knew first I'd have to face the 22 casualties. How did they make it? I couldn't even call them. And the top one, which I thought I'd never ever be able to reconcile, was a civilian death, a 9-year-old Vietnamese girl, through a friendly fire in my crew, of which I wasn't even trained to be in fire direction control. They lost everyone through rotation. Should have been 5 round the clock to make sure accidents didn't happen. And my crew at 3 in the morning was just me and one other who was leaving the next day. And they turned to me and said, "You guys fucked up." Well, since I was the new guy, OJT, I assumed it was me. And I looked at Pete, and he was sweating and shaking. And I didn't think I'd ever be able to get over that one. But 7 years later, I called about that reunion, and they actually had another one the weekend before. And I connected. And when I got all the material back, the Army stated that it wasn't FDC and it wasn't the guns, it was a defective round. No, maybe they said that just to CYA. The 9-year-old still passed and still missed a life. And the prayers that I started were all directed to her. And then she would come to me every night and come to me initially in a demon way, and it changed to an angelic way. And I welcomed the visits. And I had 21 more to go through. Most of them servicemen that I served with. 2 that I was squad leader in basic. I only had 5 and I lost 2 of them. 4 South Vietnamese soldiers in one incident, and I saw close hand that. I saw 4 soldiers 10 feet away in the next gun pit. And I literally had to pray through each and every one for months at a time to be reconciled. And at some point, I wrote a song. And it was "Come Home, My Vietnam Vets." One night I thrashed and I hit my wife and with my hand inadvertently and my foot, and she, rightfully so, kicked me out and said, "Get out of here." She said, "You never came home, and you and all your Vietnam veteran friends came home in their body, but you might as well stay there because your mind ain't there. Because you don't go to events, and when you do go to family events, you don't participate. When I talk to you, you look over my head. And why don't you go down and write? Why don't you go down and write a song? Why don't you go down and write a song? Come home, my Vietnam vets." And I got the chills. I'm getting the chills right now. Because it was the first time I didn't go back at her and say, "Come on, I'm doing the best I can." I said, "June, please. I and all my Vietnam friends are doing the best we can, and we know it's way, way short. And it may never, ever, ever lead you to say you're home. So, but I will get out of your way. I'll let you get your sleep. I'll go downstairs." So after 46 years of not talking, I sat down and I put the music channel on, and I wrote "Come Home, My Vietnam Vets." And 2 quick songs came to me, and I knocked them off. And one was "Traces of Love." And I knocked the first paragraph off and made it "Traces of War." And then everybody knows "Homeward Bound." And I knocked that off and added in my mother praying. And the teardrops flowing. And my young wife's waiting silently for me. And my wife, pregnant, would visit my mother every day. And they would pray for me. And then pray for my brother who came in country during my tour. So I didn't know what that was. I envisioned the country of South Vietnam, and I saw the military groups, I Corps, 2 Corps, 3 Corps, 4 Corps, and MACV around Saigon. And I was always in I Corps in the Asheville Valley and the DMZ. And so I said, wow, I'll put that in the song. And then I said, look, I can see infantrymen advancing. I could see my arty guys, arty boys, ground boys, the boys on the deep blue sea, out on the battleship New Jersey. And I thought of the donut dollies and the dollies. And come home, come home. And all of a sudden I heard the band playing, walking a parade. And then I said, hey, I'm going to thank every Vietnam veteran. I'm going to say I want to hug them. I learned sign language. I want to say I thank them, sign language. And I learned this from my great niece who was murdered on her gravestone, on the back, upper quadrant. I said, I know what that is now. She taught me after death that this means I love you. And I wrote, and that's the ending of the song. And it's Come Home, My Vietnam Vets. I've given away 7,000. It's played on the radio station. Come Home, one of my best friends, Welcome Home Veteran Show, Joe Griffey's. It's in this show. You're going to hear it 3 times. You're going to hear me talk it, number 1. You're going to see a video put together by Dr. Hefner, our creative genius of the Bob Reilly Project. And then we're going to close it with the narration, which narrates as good as Jim Gardner, and then I forget the one for football, but it's just as good. And his voice is, radio quality, they call it. Mine's not. So the song started, something I have, I can give. Wow, it ain't for me, my granddaughter said, who was studying music. She said, Pop, you got to do something with that song. It has as much emotion in it, pure, raw emotion, as Edwin Starr's War. I said, wow, that's a protest song. I thought mine was more healing. She said, yours is healing, and his is a protest. But you have responsibility now, because it's not for you. I said, you're 16 years old? You're right. So I had it in my pocket for 6 months. A new guy started in the warehouse. I was auditing inventory, and the truck came in delayed. I said, what you do on the weekend, Joe? What's your hobby? And he said, I'm in a band. And I said, I'm going to buy you your lunch. And I read him. I got halfway through my napkin, and he says, we're going to record that together. He says, you know why? I said, no, because you're in the band? What? He said, my brother died in Vietnam, 3rd Marine Division, on the DMZ, in 1969. I said, I was there. We supported the 3rd Marine Division on Fuller. He says, well, I don't know where he died. And I found out it was 100 meters away, 6 months earlier. March the 3rd, and I arrived on top of the mountain 100 meters away, exactly 6 months later. And he is part of one of the famous companies and platoons, author Carl Marlantes, who wrote the 2 best Vietnam classics to my way of thinking, and that's Matterhorn and What It's Like to Be in Combat. And what you're going to hear is what were the key components of my recovery. And the key components were prayer, which you're going to hear, how that developed into love, and then love into actions, and the actions I call lose, lifting others up. I got that. I'm an alcoholic, 37 years, 6 months. And Bill Wilson in 1950 said, maybe if I help Dr. Bob stay sober, maybe finally I can stay sober, and maybe he can too. And that started AA. There's an AA. Call it the Blue Book. And you're going to get content of all of the loos. Not all, but the major big ones. And there's many. But look at them from the standpoint of if you're a little dark today, a little depressed, look at them in your life. And what is it you can do like that? My thinking right now, the way I think, is every person I meet, I have something they need, and they have something I need. I hand out I love you cards to toll takers. I hand out I love you gear, which you're going to see, hats and shirts. And I wear it when I go to Kensington and Camden for the homeless and the addicts, and give them clothes, water, pretzels. It was masks during COVID. Nobody went. I was the only one during COVID. Police weren't even down there. And I would give them as many masks as I could get. And I would tell them, you don't even have to wear them for me, but collect them. And maybe you can make a pillow. And if you make enough, you can make a blanket. And if you save up enough, you can make a mattress. Because there's other uses, like you can use it to cover the wounds. And now with fentanyl, with the open wounds getting bigger and loss of arms and legs. So 24 chapters, 360. 360 means I looked and found 7 jobs, every one better than the time before, with 2 to 5 offers. I have a certain exercise regimen, a diet regimen. I've done motivational science, like what's your destiny and purpose kind of seminars, and I put some of that together. Hey, I got a segment on, guess what? Alcohol. No shit, right? But I'm giving that to you. And how did I get there? I'll tell you right now. I'll give you the secret. It only took 365 plus in 1 year meetings, and then to rehabs, and then to jails. So I was learning a bit about lifting others up. So I'll sum it up. You know, I actually, all the physical stuff and the mental stuff, it is just what it is. It's for the counselors in the VA to guide me. I've taken every course they have, and some I flunked, like the anger management one. I flunked that pretty big time a few times. So, and then they tried to give me a Zoom, and then I really got effed up. And that's a little bit about what's happened to the children. Like the colon cancer and lymph node cancer and all. Like the colon cancer. Yeah, I don't know how that happened. 3-inch large intestine, 3 inches. And they scoped it the one time and said it was like 2.9 inches. How's that possible? What kind of bottle? That's like on the Schuylkill Expressway, like a road's closed. So it didn't bother me really that much. It's actually the size of my palm was the tumor, right? And Arnold called and said, Bob, you don't have cancer. The tumor has cancer. And then Harry Callis called and said, I'm talking to the cancer. It's out of here. And then our friend Donald called and said, I'm talking to your cancer, Bob. You're fired. So going into the operating room, I pulled this. It's not even the size. I said, here, Doc, this is what you're looking for. And then I dropped it. What's going to come up are chapters on different subjects. For today, for what you'll be seeing is like a stream of content, which is prayer, love, and lose. lifting others up. And then we'll be doing some of the other 360, like job. You got to have job. You got to have destiny and purpose. You got to at least be moving toward it. Or, you can be doing. I mean, guess what? For a career, 46 years, stuff down here with the Vietnam. I traveled the world. I had 32 controllers in 32 countries reporting to me, and I had. I don't even know what figures. Then money didn't matter. And I had a house right on the golf course, right on the green. Blah, 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 and cars and blah, blah, blah. And the biggest hole was right in my fucking soul. It was empty. And right now, what always burns so bright. And when that sunshine comes in the morning at 6:12, I'm up. Because that sunshine is love. That sunshine is him. That sunshine means he wants me to do something for others. And I'm up and I'm ready. And you're going to see many examples. So I'll end it with this. I taught you already. This means I love you, right? And then 6 months and older, they know what the middle finger means, right? So how come only 1 out of 100 know that this means I love you? So this is what I say to suicide, right? And I'm going to say it for who this whole program is dedicated to. So I put that there, and it's dedicated to Corey Michael Hadley. Born June 26, 1989, died by his own hand January 2nd, 2020. 2 tours Iraq, one tour Afghanistan. I came to meet him through his mother. Again, lifting others up. I was part of a group that Joe Griffiths led to protest the elimination or the softening of the veterans exemption in the city of Philadelphia. And I was one of 50 that showed up that day and stood up and said, no way, no F way is that going to happen, in a very nice way. And at the end of the show, I usually have a lot of material. And as I'm gathering around, my friend Eddie Antonelli said, Bob, we were the last ones in it was actually the courtroom or the council office, council chambers. Darrell Clark was the president. And so we stayed our case, and then ultimately they did stop it or delay it. And he handed me a black binder. He said, this must be yours because you got all the other stuff like that. And I said, oh, maybe. So I stuck it in my briefcase, took it home. 2 days later, I looked at it and said, not mine. Wait a minute, there's all these notes on it. And I see one phone number, but it had notes and it had bill numbers. Bill number, HR, blah, blah, blah. Thinking, I wonder if that was the veteran exemption. Anyway, let me call that number. Hey, I have something here that maybe you know what it is. And she said, it was a woman. I said I was at City Hall, and I found this. My friend found it. And is it yours? Oh, no. That's Councilwoman so-and-so. She sponsored a bill to proclaim a day, a Philadelphia Day for my son. I said, oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I said, why? Oh, he was a veteran. I said, well, I'm a veteran too. I said, I don't know why, but I'm going to ask you a question. Did he die by his own hand? And she says, my God, how did you know that? I said, I did not know that. But I think I'm sorry I said it. She says, no, 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 no. You don't know the story. He was a multiple Iraq, Afghanistan vet. And he came home and he had a lot of mental problems, the PTSD, some physical things, TBIs, which, very kind of aggressive. And he had some recovery, he had some healing, and then he had periods when it was not so good and it got just darker and darker. And he communicated subtly for a while, and then at some point we knew what was to come soon. And someone in the family suggested equine therapy, which is horse therapy. And for 6 months it seemed to be working. But then he gave us his list of passwords and how he wanted his funeral to be. And he did indeed die at his own hand, but yet we were fully prepared for it, and we fully consider it service connected, 100%. And I said, well, I certainly do too. I mean, it's no different than dying on the battlefield, than dying at home with something connected to the service, that's exactly it. And I said, would you be open to a breakfast? Maybe me and Eddie have breakfast with you and meet you someplace in Philadelphia and talk? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Mr. Reilly, sure. She said, you know where Northeast High School is? I said, oh, yeah, sure. I used to live in Philadelphia. We ended up at the diner right across the street and had a couple hours. And a teacher for like 30 years. Very well spoken, very loving, very personable, very accepting. There's a deep gash that will never, ever heal completely, but the process of healing seemed to have started a little earlier because of the way he handled it. His favorite movie, he watched it dozens and dozens and dozens of times, was Black Panther. I hadn't watched it, but now I have watched it a few times. He loved motorcycles, he loved the beer. I think I would have, maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I would have had a near beer or a zero alcohol beer with him, but I would have loved to have been on the back of that motorcycle. I never had a ride. I don't think I ever want to get on one, but someday he's going to take me for a ride, because I know where he's at, and I dedicate this whole show, the whole Suicide Elimination Tour, is dedicated to my really good friend, dear friend, Corey Michael Hadley. And I end it, and I guess you could call this sign language, right? This is what I say to suicide. This, I don't have to say it.